It was Saturday evening. The sun had just set, creating a twilight that made it hard to decide whether to turn on headlights. Mark Evans didn't have to decide. He was pulling into his garage on a quiet street in Sharpsburg. A moment later, a slender, dark-haired man emerged from a side door carrying a duffel bag, briefcase, and laptop. Years of experience allowed him to handle the items with ease. He entered his house without calling out to his wife Lisa, knowing she wasn't home. He went to the living room, placing his briefcase and laptop on the couch and his garment bag at the stairs. He hung his coat in the closet by the front door, then removed his jacket and tie, undoing the top buttons of his shirt. He had just returned from a regional meeting of managers at ABC Industries, though he wasn't technically a manager, but the top systems analyst. His supervisor, good at organizing staff but clueless about computer systems, required him at the meeting in Pittsburgh. He had told his wife he'd be back Monday, claiming the meeting was followed by weekend seminars. He had his reasons for this and didn't want to return too early. Regretting not bringing comfortable clothes to the trip, he knew Lisa would have questioned why. Now home, he showered and changed into jeans and a polo shirt. After a quick meal of leftovers and a bottle of beer, he read the local newspaper in the living room, appearing as a husband relaxing after a trip. In reality, he was biding time, dealing with a personal crisis. He'd worked through denial, but still faced anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Past midnight, he cleaned up the kitchen, realizing it was procrastination. Unable to find another solution, he put on a light jacket and headed to the side door. Remembering something, he returned to the living room, sent an email from his laptop, then left the house. After 5 minutes in the garage, he drove away, the garage door closing behind him. At 7:37 a.m., Sharpsburg's emergency operator answered a call. "Emergency? What's your emergency?" A young-sounding female voice responded. "I need the police. I think a crime has been committed." "Where are you located, ma'am?" the operator asked. "I'm at a payphone on Park Drive near George Washington Park," she replied. The operator, understanding the poor connection, asked, "What crime has been committed, ma'am? Were you attacked or robbed?" The young woman hesitated before answering, "No, it wasn't me. I'm fine. I was running through the park on the access road to the picnic areas and saw a car parked there. The doors were open, lights on, and there was a lot of blood." The emergency operator, now very interested, asked, "Will an ambulance be needed? Are there any injuries?" "No, no one was there, just an empty car and blood." A few seconds later, she added, "I didn't look around much. I was scared someone might come after me, so I ran to this payphone to call you." "You did the right thing. A car is on the way and should be there in less than 10 minutes. Please wait for the officers so you can show them the exact location." Alarmed, the caller replied, "No, I'm not waiting. What if they come after me? I'm going home." She then hung up. The emergency operator stared at the screen as the call ended. "Damn it. I hope I didn't divert officers from something more important." Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Detective Peter Nesbitt arrived at the Evans house. A blonde woman pulled into the driveway as he got out of his car. He quickly approached her. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Mrs. Evans." She turned, pulling a suitcase from the car, and replied, "I'm Lisa Evans. Do I know you?" "No, ma'am. I'm Detective Peter Nesbitt from the Sharpsburg Police. We're trying to locate your husband, Mark Evans. His car was found abandoned in George Washington Park this morning." He showed his badge and ID. Lisa looked concerned, but then said, "Mark is in Pittsburgh. He always leaves his car at the airport. You must be mistaken." Detective Nesbitt insisted, "We're sure it's his car. Both the license plate and VIN match his registration." Confused, she walked toward the side door. "If it's his car, it must have been stolen from the airport. I don't know what else to tell you." Nesbitt persisted. "When did you last speak to your husband? Could you call him now to make sure he's in Pittsburgh? Does he have a cell phone you can call?" Lisa stopped, put down her bag, and rummaged through her purse for her phone. "He called me yesterday morning from Pittsburgh. I'll call him now." She dialed his number, but a phone rang in the detective's pocket. He answered, "Hello, Mrs. Evans?" Surprised, she asked, "How did you get Mark's cell phone?" Nesbitt replied, "I can't give it to you. It's evidence in a possible major crime. It was found in your husband's car." Lisa, now more concerned, asked, "Major crime? What do you mean?" "Your husband's car was found with the doors open and a bullet hole. We need to find him to rule him out as a sufferer or suspect. Could you call his hotel in Pittsburgh?" Lisa picked up her briefcase and said, "Sure, the hotel number is in my address book. He always stays at the same Holiday Inn. Come inside and we'll sort this out." Inside the kitchen, she quickly found the number and called the hotel, But after hanging up, she turned to the detective. "Mark's briefcase and laptop are in the living room. I don't understand." The detective, looking thoughtful, called his colleague. "Hi, Dave. It's Pete. I need a search warrant for the Evans house. We need to determine if Mr. Evans is a sufferer or a suspect. Bring it here ASAP. I'll be waiting." He hung up and sat down across from Lisa. "A search warrant? You can search all you want. Just ask. I want you to find my husband." Detective Nesbitt replied, "I need to follow protocol. If your husband is involved in anything illegal, any evidence found without a warrant can't be used in court." Lisa, angry, said, "Illegal? Mark isn't involved in anything illegal. He works with computers." Nesbitt asked, "Why did he come back to town without telling you?" Lisa turned pale and whispered, "Oh no, he can't be." Panicked, she said, "I have no idea why he came home early. All I know is he's not involved in anything illegal." Her panic grew. "Mark could be hurt somewhere. You have to find him." Detective Nesbitt more gently said, "We don't know anything for sure yet, Mrs. Evans. I need to do things right. All of our officers are looking for your husband. Why don't you make some coffee while we wait for the warrant?" His sympathetic tone calmed Lisa, and she began to make coffee. However, she tensed again when he said, "While we have coffee, could you tell me how you spent the last 48 hours? We need statements from everyone involved." Nesbitt waited a few minutes before asking for a preliminary statement. They sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee while he described the condition of Mark's car, including the bullet hole and blood. He said the blood suggested a second bullet shot the body, which was lying on firewood next to the car, and that the bullet was being examined. The car was towed for further inspection, and the medical examiner and forensic scientist were still working on the scene. Detective David Klein, Nesbitt's partner, arrived with the search warrant and 2 forensic technicians. They began a thorough search of the Evans home, garage, and car. Nesbitt arranged with Lisa to collect Mark's razor and toothbrush for DNA comparison. Lisa was so distressed that Nesbitt asked her to stay on the couch while they finished the search. After an hour, they decided to take only Mark's briefcase, laptop, and DNA samples. The laptop was password protected. "Mrs. Evans, do you know your husband's laptop password?" Lisa, hopeful to help, said, "It used to be his first and last name and his birth year, Trimark 1971. It should work." None of the variations worked. Nesbitt reassured her, "Our technicians will find a way around it." The items were stored in the forensic van. Nesbitt sat with Lisa to get her statement. "So, Mrs. Evans, I need some basic information about your whereabouts this weekend. Let's start with Saturday morning." Lisa took a deep breath. "Saturday morning, I did chores around the house. Mark called from Pittsburgh around 1 o'clock or 1:30, apologizing for not being home. I went shopping until 4:30, then came home. After dinner, around 7:30, I went to a friend's house and stayed the night. This morning, I got up late, took my time, and got home around 2 o'clock. As she explained, she grew more tense, staring at the floor and clenching her fists. Detective Nesbitt finished writing, closed his notebook, and said, "We might need more details later, Mrs. Evans. This is enough for now, but be ready to provide more if needed." He pocketed his notepad and pen, then stood up to join the others searching the garage and car. Before leaving, he asked, "Do you have any recent full-length photos of your husband? A good headshot would also help. We only have his driver's license photo." He walked to the fireplace, glancing at wedding photos. Lisa quickly fetched a photo album. "Here are some recent photos, Detective. Take your pick." They sat together, and Nesbitt chose a group photo and a headshot of Mark. "These will be perfect." Lisa handed him the photos, and he asked, "Is the man in the photo a relative? If we need a DNA sample, a family member could help if we can't use the razor or toothbrush." Lisa replied, "No, that's Blake Moore, Mark's best friend since elementary school. Mark has no nearby relatives." Nesbitt thanked her and joined the others in the garage. Lisa, looking on the verge of tears, stayed at the kitchen table. Nesbitt felt sympathy for her. Her husband was missing and possibly involved in a serious incident. The fact that she didn't know he was in town added to the mystery. The detectives and forensic experts finished searching the garage and car. They found bloodstains on the gas and brake pedals of Lisa's car, prompting them to tow it for further inspection. As the technicians packed up, the detectives discussed the case. Nesbitt, facing the side door, said to his partner, "What's your opinion of Mrs. Evans? I have my doubts, especially with the blood in her car." His partner replied, "She seemed like a worried wife, but it's hard to tell right now. We shouldn't jump to conclusions." Nesbitt decided, "Let's see her reaction when we tell her about the blood and towing her car." They knocked and entered the kitchen, surprising Lisa, who was on her cell phone. She quickly ended the call. "You're back. I thought you were done." Nesbitt said, "We found blood smears on the pedals of your car. We're towing it for a thorough inspection. I hope you don't mind." Lisa looked shocked. "Blood in my car? I didn't see any blood." Nesbitt replied, "We'll need to know how it got there. If it's related to the park incident, we'll push for answers. Also, we'll need the shoes you wore today." "I haven't been to the park in weeks. I don't understand how there could be blood in my car." She handed him her shoes and then slumped into a chair, covering her face and sobbing. Both detectives realized they needed more information and said goodbye, leaving Lisa slumped on the kitchen chair. "What do you think, Dave? Is she a worried wife or a good actress? Did you notice she was on the phone and hung up quickly?" David Klein shook his head. "I don't know, Pete. She seems sincere, but if the blood in her car is her husband's, she could be involved. We should talk to their friends and neighbors. Maybe someone knows something. She was likely talking to her best friend." "Yeah, digging around might help. I want to know why he came back early. That could be the key." Detective Nesbitt bagged the shoes as evidence. Since they arrived separately, they drove back to the station alone, each trying to make sense of the clues. They spent the rest of their shift on reports. The next morning, Peter and Dave arrived early, eager to dive into the case. They were greeted by forensics and medical examiner reports. It took an hour to read through them. Peter noted, "The reports point in the same direction, but we shouldn't rush. Let's see what else we can find from the computer. Meanwhile, we should talk to his lawyer and colleagues." David agreed, and they visited Mark's lawyer, Robert Graham, who quickly gave them a few minutes of his time. "I can't discuss my client's legal situation. What do you need?" Detective Nesbitt said, "We need confirmation of these emails sent to you from Mark Evans' computer. We want to ensure they're not just drafts." He handed over 4 pages. The lawyer confirmed, "These are originals. I can confirm receipt." The detectives thanked him and headed to their car, exchanging smiles. On their way to ABC Industrial, Peter said, "As you mentioned, the spouse is usually involved, but we have more work to do." At Mark's workplace, they were ushered into his supervisor's office. Detective Klein took the lead. "We're investigating the discovery of Mark Evans's car in George Washington Park. You might have read about it. We have some questions." Mark's boss assured them of his cooperation. "Mark is a valuable employee. What do you need to know?" "First, is Mark supposed to stay in Pittsburgh until Friday night? He reportedly had seminars on Saturday and Sunday. We need to confirm his schedule." Mark's boss quickly responded, "Mark didn't have any events scheduled for the weekend. I expected him back Friday night." Detective Klein noted this and continued, "Have you noticed anything unusual about Mark lately? Anything on his mind?" The boss thought for a moment, then replied, "Mark seemed to have a lot on his mind recently. I asked if he was having any problems, but he said everything was fine. He's been brooding a lot. I assumed he was just working hard." The detectives thanked him and returned to their car, sensing they were making progress. By late morning, they were back at the office and received preliminary DNA results and a forensic report, which included a strange box with wires. With more pieces of the puzzle in place, they reviewed their notes and information in an interrogation room. Confident they had a better understanding, they decided to visit Lisa Evans again. Arriving at the Evans house around 3 p.m., they didn't call ahead to catch her off guard. Lisa seemed startled when she saw them. "Detectives, have you found my husband? I call the sergeant every 2 hours and he has nothing to report." Detective Nesbitt replied, "No, but we've made some progress. We'd like to ask you a few questions." Lisa, looking embarrassed, said, "Sure, come in. I'll do my best to help." In the living room, the detective sat across from her. Detective Klein opened his notebook and asked, "Is there anything you want to tell us about your relationship with Blake Moore?" Lisa turned pale. "What? Blake is my husband's best friend. He's just my friend." Detective Nesbitt asked calmly, "Are you having an affair with Blake Moore?" Lisa, even paler, stammered, "Absolutely not. How can you ask me that?" The detective stood up. Detective Klein said, "We need you to come to the station for a formal statement." Lisa panicked. "What? Am I under arrest? Why do I have to go to the station?" "You're not under arrest yet. We need an official statement. You can have a lawyer if you want." Lisa replied quickly, "I don't need a lawyer. I'll come to the station. I'll do whatever it takes to help find Mark." Lisa escorted the detectives to their car. Once at the station, they led her to a dim interrogation room, designed to create a negative environment. "We'll ask you to wait here while we gather our documents. Are you sure you don't want a lawyer?" Detective Nesbitt gave her another chance to decide. She refused, shaking her head, her blue eyes full of tears. The detective left the room, ensuring the cameras were on. Detective Klein told his commanding officer, "I want a good recording of everything said. I think we're going to solve this case." Peter Nesbitt approached with files. "Let's have a coffee first. Let her have a little time to reflect." The three men agreed and spent 20 minutes in the coffee shop discussing the case and planning the interrogation. Meanwhile, across town, a volunteer at Crime Stoppers answered a call. "Good morning, this is Crime Stoppers. We pay up to $1,000 for tips on solved crimes. This call is being recorded." After a few seconds of silence, an older man spoke. "Can I get money if I help the police?" "It depends on your tip and how it helps the police. Do you have any information about a crime?" There was another pause before the caller said, "Do I get the money right away? But what if the police trick me?" "The money isn't from the police, so they won't scam you. Tell me what you know, and I'll give you a code number. You can call back in a few days to see if your tip helped." The man sounded frustrated. "I need the money now. I need juice. If you need food, I can direct you to shelters." "Not food, juice. The kind that costs $5 a bottle." The volunteer smiled but said, "If your tip is good, you could buy a lot of juice." "Okay, I'll wait. I saw someone throw a weapon into the river under the 3rd Street Bridge. It was Sunday morning. He had a rifle and 2 shovels." The volunteer asked, "Was this on the east side of the bridge? Did he throw them in the water?" "Yes, he just threw them off the dock. I can describe him. He was large with blonde hair." "And his car?" "It was dark blue. The license plate started with A's SS, but I forget the rest." The volunteer took down the information and said, "I have everything we need. Your number is 127. Call back in a few days, and we'll let you know if it helped the police." The volunteer relayed the information to the police liaison officer. A diver was sent out within an hour and found the items quickly. The weapon was taken to the crime lab, where it matched a recent crime scene in George Washington Park. A report was sent to the detectives, and a technician retrieved the 2 shovels from the property clerk. As the detectives left the coffee shop, they were met by a clerk delivering the ballistics and Crime Stoppers reports. "Detectives, we have the weapon used in the George Washington Park shooting. The attached report might lead you to the perpetrator." The clerk handed over the reports. Klein and Nesbitt reviewed the reports, then called up vehicle records on a computer. "Pete, let's split up. I'll question our guest in the interrogation room, and you can get a uniformed officer to bring in Mr. Moore for questioning." "Sounds like a plan, Dave. Things are coming together nicely." Detective Klein gathered the reports and headed to the interrogation room where Lisa Evans was waiting. Meanwhile, his partner arranged for a uniformed officer to visit Blake Moore's house. Soon they were on their way. In the interview room, Lisa sat calmly, showing no fear or sadness. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Mrs. Evans. This room is monitored and recorded," Detective Klein said. She replied, "I don't mind. I have nothing to hide." Klein responded, "Good. Let's get started. Are you having an affair with Blake Moore? Yes or no?" Lisa's shoulders slumped and she looked away. "Yes," she whispered. Klein showed her papers from Mark's laptop. "We have proof of your affair. Your husband knew. He sent these to his attorney, planning a divorce on grounds of infidelity. This map shows your visits to Moore's house." Lisa looked shocked. "How did Mark know?" Klein held up a small device. "He installed this tracker in your car, monitoring your location in real time." She stared at the device. "Mark knew for weeks? And he wanted a divorce?" She began to cry. Klein continued, "Mark documented your interactions with Moore. The last map was from Saturday night when he went missing. He emailed his lawyer saying he was going to confront you and feared he might get arrested." Lisa said, "But Mark never showed up at Blake's. I spent the night there." Klein replied, "Preliminary DNA results show the blood in the park is his. We found the weapon used, linked to your lover. The question is how long you'll cover it up." Lisa insisted, "Blake didn't do anything to Mark. We were together all night." Klein added, "We also found your husband's blood in your car and on your shoes. My partner is picking up Mr. Moore now. Whoever tells us what happened and where to find Mark's body will get a better deal." Lisa was silent, visibly shaken, as Klein gathered the papers and waited for her response. Detective Klein handed Lisa the blood test reports, but she barely glanced at them. "Mark can't be dead. I love him. I need him," she sobbed, clearly very upset. "Blake will tell you the same. If Mark got hurt in the park, we had nothing to do with it." She cried into a crumpled, wet handkerchief. Detective Klein gave her a few minutes to regain composure. When she seemed calmer, he said, "There is no doubt your husband is dead. The medical examiner concluded there's over a 95% chance based on blood loss and the lack of treatment at any facility in the county. He handed her the report and photos of the scene. Seeing the bloody photos, she burst into tears again. I'll leave you alone for a few minutes to think. You're not helping yourself by denying responsibility. Klein left the room, placed the reports on his desk, and shook his head as he passed his commanding officer. He headed to the break room for coffee, while his commander monitored Lisa on the interrogation room camera. Detective Nesbitt, thinking about the case, drove to Blakemoore's house, meeting a patrol car there. Nesbitt was almost surprised when Blakemore answered the door promptly. "Yes, officers. How can I help you?" Moore asked, seeing the police. Detective Nesbitt introduced himself. "I'm Detective Nesbitt, here about Mark Evans' disappearance. We need you at the station for questioning. Mrs. Evans is there now, and we have questions that require your input." Moore asked, "Am I under arrest? I know Mark is missing, but I don't know how I can help." "We have questions you might help answer. Please come with us. You're not under arrest." Moore, too stunned to resist, joined them in the unmarked car. He sat in the back, complying with department protocol. Detective Nesbitt turned to his partner. "Let's head to the station." On the way, Nesbitt asked Moore, "How well do you know Mrs. Evans?" "She's just Mark's wife to me. Why do you ask?" Moore replied. "Just wondering. What do you do, Mr. Moore?" "I run a landscaping company, Moore's Landscaping. We do a lot of commercial work, even for the city," Moore said, relaxing a bit. At the station, Moore was placed in an interrogation room next to Lisa's. Detective Nesbitt gathered Klein's folders and began questioning Moore. Initially, Moore denied the affair, but evidence from emails and surveillance reports made him confess. He admitted the affair lasted almost 4 months, but insisted neither of them injured Mark, and that they didn't leave his house the night Mark disappeared. As Nesbitt pressed him, Moore suggested a new theory. If Mark found out about us, he might have gone into a rage or even hired someone to make it look like we were involved. He and I have history. Nesbitt countered, "We have the weapon used. A witness described you and your car, and provided most of your license plate number. Don't try to claim Mark framed you with an elaborate self-destruction." Blakemore became agitated and said, "You don't know Mark. We've been best friends since elementary school, but I've learned not to mess with his girlfriends or his wife. In high school, I dated one of his girlfriends behind his back. When he found out, he scared me, even though I'm bigger and stronger. He warned me he'd liquidate me if I did it again." The detective, slightly amused, replied, "So, you were scared of him, but still had an affair with his wife?" Blake, calming down, said, "I couldn't resist her. It built up over the years, and a few months ago, I made a move. We've been seeing each other since. I can't believe he found out. We were so careful." The detective sifted through reports. "Affairs often lead to homicide. I think you and Lisa planned this. You can either come clean or face the maximum penalty. Your choice." Blake insisted, "We had nothing to do with it. If Mark found out, he might have done something drastic. Maybe he set us up." Detective Nesbitt said, "We have enough to search your home, car, and office. Confess now for leniency. Use your head, Blake." Blake, outraged, said, "I didn't hurt Mark. Maybe Lisa did something, but I don't know about it." The detective picked up his papers and left the room, saying, "When criminals work together, one always tries to blame the other. You won't be leaving anytime soon." Outside, Detective Nesbitt found his partner with another report. "The shovels found in the river are from Moore's Landscaping. These guys think we won't find out." Later, the detectives presented their evidence to the district attorney. Despite lacking a body, the evidence was strong enough to press charges. Half an hour later, Lisa Evans and Blake Moore were charged with Mark Evans' homicide. They proclaimed their innocence as their Miranda rights were read. After the arraignment, Lisa and Blake were fingerprinted and photographed, neither needing to be told not to smile. As they were led back to their cells, they spoke for the first time since being charged. "What are we going to do, Blake? They can't believe we did anything to Mark, can they?" Lisa asked, still sniffing. "We need our own lawyers, or maybe share one to save money since we're accused of the same thing. But this is all wrong. I think Mark set us up," Blake said, frustrated. "You can't believe that, can you? Why would Mark go to such extremes?" Lisa asked, shocked. "I don't think you knew Mark as well as you thought. I'm amazed he didn't do something drastic when he found out about us. If I thought he'd find out, I wouldn't have touched you," Blake replied, shaking his head. Blake told Lisa about a past incident when he had secretly dated Mark's girlfriend. Standing by the cell bars, separated by a concrete wall, they could easily talk. "I don't believe Mark would do this. I don't even know how he found out." We were always careful and only met when he was out of town, Lisa said thoughtfully. I regret betraying him. Even if he's not dead, I want a divorce, she added, her voice trailing off with emotion. Blake listened to her sobs and said, Lisa, stop it. You knew the risks when you came to my house. You were aware of the consequences. She quieted down and said softly, You're right. I just hope he forgives me. After a pause, Lisa suggested, I could call Robert Graham, our attorney. Maybe he can represent both of us and split the costs. They agreed, and Lisa got an officer's attention to make a call. However, Robert Graham declined due to his involvement in Mark's divorce proceedings, recommending his colleague Basil Smith instead. Lisa agreed, and Smith was on his way. Blake was pleased to hear this and thanked Lisa. They waited in their cells until Basil Smith, a seasoned lawyer, arrived. The introductions were brief, and Smith reviewed the charges. So, you're both charged with Mark Evans' homicide. What did the officers tell you? Smith asked. Mrs. Evans, you first. Just the main points. Lisa recounted her story, ending in tears. I had nothing to do with it. I love Mark. I couldn't hurt him. Smith then turned to Blake. Your turn, briefly. Blake summarized his experience, asserting, We had nothing to do with Mark's disappearance. I think Mark organized this to frame us. Smith, sensing the urgency, said, We need to focus on getting you both out of here. Bail will likely be set at $100,000 each. Will that be a problem? Lisa, shocked, asked, Do I need $100,000 for bail? No, just 10% or $10,000 cash for the bail bond, Smith reassured her. They agreed they could manage bail and were eager to be released. Smith informed them, You'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. Bail will be set then, and you'll make arrangements to get out. Prepare to spend the night here. Both clients reacted badly to the lawyer's statement. He explained he couldn't do more until charges were filed. Once they were out, he would talk to the district attorney to unseal the evidence and better understand their case. They were taken back to their cells, where neither slept well, given greasy takeout food, a single blanket, and loud cellmates. The next morning at 10 o'clock, they met with their attorney before court. Despite their disheveled appearance, they entered their pleas of not guilty, and bail was set at $100,000. Blake, owning a home and business, quickly negotiated a $10,000 bond and was released by early afternoon. Lisa was less fortunate. Without sole ownership of her home and finding her savings account empty, she had to call her parents for help. After much persuasion, they agreed to provide the $10,000. However, the delay meant she spent another night in jail, this time with 2 tipsy courtesans. The next day, after the financial matters were resolved, she was released, went home, showered, and ignored incoming calls. The next month passed quickly. Lisa learned that Mark had withdrawn the money from their account to protect his share before their divorce. She received the divorce papers without knowing what he did with the cash. Lisa and Blake met with Basil Smith several times. Smith received copies of the evidence and planned to meet with the district attorney to get the charges dismissed, arguing the difficulty of obtaining a conviction without a body or witness. He suggested hiring a private investigator to explore if Mark had orchestrated his own disappearance. Blake agreed, but Lisa believed Mark was a sufferer of a botched carjacking. Over the next few weeks, the investigator found nothing. He tried to find the tipster who reported the discarded rifle and shovels, but no one recognized the voice from the call. The tipster never followed up, adding to the mystery. Meanwhile, tensions between Lisa and Blake grew. After his release, Blake suggested they continue their affair. Lisa refused, blaming him for her situation. I want nothing to do with you except our court case, she said, often crying. Blake's response was cold. Suit yourself, Lisa. You're not the only woman in town. They only spoke in the company of their lawyer, keeping their distance otherwise. Their affair had turned icy cold. A month after their release, Basil Smith arranged a meeting with District Attorney Jeff Bagden. Lisa and Blake hoped the charges would be dropped, as they had been molestated with questions about their relationship. They screened calls using caller ID and answering machines, eager to clear their names and move on. Jeff Bagden, surprisingly young and stylish, began, I just received final reports from the medical examiner and police. Based on the evidence, I'm offering a reduced sentence of 8 to 12 years for a guilty plea to second-degree homicide. Lisa and Blake were shocked, loudly proclaiming their innocence. Their attorney, trying to calm them, asked how Bagden justified the offer. Bagden explained, We have new evidence. DNA from blood on your car's license plate and trunk gasket matches Mark Evans. Additionally, black polyethylene found under Mark's car matches material from your landscaping business. Lisa angrily accused, "Blake, what have you done?" Blake exploded, "You know I had nothing to do with it. You were with me when it happened." Basil Smith intervened, calming them both. He addressed Bagden. "Excuse my clients, we hoped the charges would be dropped and your statement caught them off guard." Bagden, amused, replied, "I understand, but we have enough evidence to go to trial. The medical examiner's report confirms the sufferer lost too much blood to survive. The crime scene suggests the body was dragged and loaded into a car. The prosecution is confident." Bagden handed over the reports and left. Lisa and Blake hurriedly talked to Smith, who told them to be quiet. He said, "I know you're shocked. Don't fight each other. We need to figure out a defense. Do you want to reject the plea deal?" Both refused the deal, convinced they wouldn't be convicted. Smith agreed to prepare for trial. After they left, Smith reviewed the reports, questioning whether his clients were truthful. Despite his doubts, he was committed to defending them. Months later, the trial began. Judge Robert Cox took his seat at 10 a.m. on Monday. Basil Smith sat between Lisa and Blake to manage their tension. He had considered suggesting separate lawyers, but they couldn't afford it. Blake's business was struggling, and Lisa had quit her job due to the stress of the trial and difficulties with her missing husband's friends. District Attorney Jeff Bagden began his opening statement directly. "Members of the jury, we do not have Mark Evans' body, but we intend to prove he is dead and that the defendants are guilty of his homicide." He revealed that the defendants had an affair, which Mark Evans discovered, leading him to file for divorce. Although it was unclear how or when Mark found out, traces on his computer showed he knew when and where they met. Emails documented his tracking efforts, financial preparations for divorce, and his intention to confront them. "We cannot pinpoint when they met, but we know the results. Evidence suggests they met at Mr. Moore's residence, where Mr. Evans was incapacitated, placed in the passenger seat, and driven to George Washington Park. There, he was shot in the upper chest while likely unconscious. He was dragged from the car, thrown to the ground, and shot again, this time striking his carotid artery. Graphic photos will show his final moments." At this point, Lisa Evans lost her composure, requiring Judge Cox's intervention to restore order. Bagden continued, "After the second shot, Mr. Evans was wrapped in plastic, dragged from the site, and loaded into Mr. Moore's trunk. He was driven to an unknown location and buried. The homicide weapon and shovels were dumped in the river, but a concerned citizen reported this, leading police to recover them. Forensic analysis confirmed the defendant's presence at the crime scene. Mr. Evans' blood was found on Mr. Moore's car and on Lisa Evans' shoes." Bagden concluded, "The defense will claim they were not at the scene, relying on each other's alibis. I am confident you will see through this and find them guilty." Basil Smith countered, emphasizing the presumption of innocence and urging the jury to focus on the evidence. Despite his efforts, the district attorney's statement had a strong impact. The first witness, a computer expert, testified about the emails and maps Mark Evans used to track his wife's meetings with Mr. Moore. The tracking device, described in Mark's letter to his counsel, accurately logged locations and times. This evidence embarrassed Lisa Evans, while Blake Moore appeared bored. Smith's cross-examination yielded little, as the device and emails were indisputable. Reporters took notes, especially about the tracking device, anticipating interest from their readers. After an extended lunch break, the trial resumed with testimony from the emergency operator and 2 patrolmen who first responded. They provided basic, drama-free facts about discovering Mark Evans's car. The trial's intensity rose when detectives and medical examiners described the crime scene, supported by large graphic photographs showing bullet holes, blood, and drag marks. The medical examiner detailed the blood loss, estimating 3 to 4 pints, and described blood jets indicating a severed artery. He concluded that Mark Evans was dying when Lisa Evans lost control and screamed, "No, Mark can't be dead." Her outburst forced the judge to adjourn the trial until the next morning. The second day began with the medical expert continuing his testimony, focusing on blood sample tests. After 15 minutes, DA Jeff Bagden ended his questioning, turning the witness over to defense attorney Basil Smith. Smith checked that Lisa Evans, now sedated, was calm. He aimed to refute the graphic, execution-like impression of the shooting. Smith asked, "You estimated Mark Evans lost 3 to 4 pints of blood, but isn't it possible it was 1 to 2 pints depending on blood distribution?" The medical examiner replied, "It's unlikely, but not impossible." Smith continued, "Could first aid have lessened the fatality of Mark Evans' injury?" The examiner said, "Unlikely, but not impossible. Immediate medical attention would have been required." Smith highlighted the lack of evidence for immediate assistance and dismissed the witness, having secured small concessions. Next, a forensic scientist specializing in weapons and ammunition testified about 2 recovered bullets. One bullet from the car seat was deformed. The other, from firewood, was in good condition and matched the recovered weapon. Smith asked, "Were the bullets checked for bone or flesh remnants?" The technician confirmed minimal traces of blood on the bullets, explaining that passing through layers of padding and fabric likely cleaned them. He noted the bullets had a full metal jacket, typical for military use, with a gilding metal copper-steel jacket around the core. He explained that this jacket is stronger than a standard all-metal jacket, usually made of copper. This was both good and bad for the defense. While there was no evidence the bullets passed through the body, the circumstances and type of bullet explained the situation. The hope of tracing the weapon was futile. It was sold at a weapon show 20 years ago with no buyer record. Basil Smith did confirm no fingerprints or DNA from the defendants were found on the weapon or casings. Anything not washed away by river water was wiped clean before disposal. Another technician discussed the shovels found. There were no fingerprints or DNA, but they were branded Moore's Landscaping. 14 identical shovels were found at Moore's business. Cross-examination yielded no new information. Witnesses from the Forensic Science Department and police continued all morning and afternoon. Basil Smith's most significant cross-examination occurred with a technician who found blood in Blake Moore's car. The technician admitted the blood could have been planted by a third party, giving Smith a small victory. Things complicated with testimony from the technician at Lisa Evans's home. Blood was found in her car and on her right shoe. Although the technician admitted they couldn't determine if the blood was transferred from the shoe to the gas pedal or vice versa, the lawyer hoped this doubt would help Lisa. As the prosecution's witnesses concluded, the third morning began with the defense's evidence presentation. Local newspapers speculated that the defense would struggle against the prosecution's evidence. They suggested that without a body, a conviction would be difficult, especially given the defense's strategy of casting doubt on whether Mark Evans was really dead. Basil Smith's first defense witness was blood analysis expert Dr. Wilbur. He testified, "A better job could have been done collecting blood evidence. Properly analyzing blood-soaked soil could have given a more accurate estimate of blood loss." He believed as little as 1.5 pints of blood could have created the scene, and someone losing that much blood could still be alive. The district attorney did not cross-examine him. Next, Blake Moore testified, claiming innocence and suggesting Mark orchestrated his own homicide. He stated he never owned a weapon, and the shovels found could have been stolen from his work sites. Basil Smith kept the testimony brief, turning Moore over for cross-examination. Jeff Bagden asked, "Why do you think Mark Evans would organize his own homicide?" Blake recounted how Mark had threatened him in high school after Blake dated Mark's girlfriend behind his back. Bagden then asked, "So, this isn't the first time you interfered with Mark Evans's relationships. Don't you think if he wanted to destroy someone, he would have chosen you?" Blake Moore couldn't directly answer the question, muttering that his physical advantage over Mark would have prevented a confrontation. "So, you think you could intimidate your friend into taking his own life? Is that why you felt comfortable taking his wife?" the prosecutor asked, then continued without waiting for an answer. "Your actions show you're a narcissist who thinks he can have any woman and disregard friendship." Basil Smith objected, arguing the prosecutor was testifying rather than asking questions. The judge agreed and instructed the jury to disregard the prosecutor's last statement. Despite this, Blake was visibly upset but left the stand without further comment. Basil Smith realized Blake's testimony had backfired, but hoped Lisa's testimony might help. Lisa, more composed, emphatically stated she wasn't involved in any attack on her husband and suggested he might have been carjacked. Basil chose not to ask additional questions. The prosecutor asked Lisa, "Where were you between midnight Saturday and 2 p.m. Sunday?" Lisa, embarrassed, replied, "I was with Blake Moore at his house from 8 p.m. Saturday until about 1:30 p.m. Sunday." "You didn't quite answer the question. Tell us what you did from midnight Saturday to Sunday." Lisa, flustered, said, "I was in Blake's bedroom at midnight. We were, doing it." "And how long did this last?" the prosecutor pressed. "Probably until after 1 a.m., Lisa admitted, embarrassed. "Then what?" he asked. "We slept until about 5:45 a.m., she said. "Was Mr. Moore in bed when you woke up?" "Yes, he was there." We got busy again and went back to sleep around 6:30, then got up at 11 a.m., Lisa said quickly. So you woke him up to do it again at 6:30? The prosecutor clarified. Lisa, embarrassed, replied, No, he was already ready. The prosecutor, seeing the jury's reaction, continued, Tell us exactly how you woke him up. Lisa, resigned, said, I just started doing it with him. The prosecutor moved in for the final blow. You said you love your husband. Is that true? After Lisa's emphatic yes, he continued, you spent the night with his best friend while he took his life. How can we believe you weren't involved in his end of life? Lisa cried quietly, unable to answer. Judge Cox ended her suffering by asking if there were any more questions. When there were none, the judge announced a lunch recess. After Lisa composed herself, she joined her attorney, Basil Smith, for a somber lunch. The experienced attorney warned them the case could go either way. Privately, he was pessimistic since both clients had faltered on the witness stand. The afternoon session ended quickly as Smith announced there were no more defense witnesses. Both attorneys prepared their closing statements. The prosecutor emphasized the overwhelming evidence against the defendants, while the defense stressed the circumstantial nature of the case, the absence of a body, and the lack of a clear motive. The case went to the jury by 4 p.m., and they deliberated for 2 hours before retiring for the night. The next morning, Lisa and Blake waited at Basil Smith's office for the jury's verdict. Sharing a conference room, they put aside their differences, hoping for acquittal. By 3:30 p.m., the call came. The jury had reached a verdict. Lisa's parents, who had come to town for the trial, were present at the courthouse. The verdict was announced quickly, guilty of second-degree homicide. Lisa burst into tears, and Blake pounded his fist in frustration. They were handcuffed and taken into custody, with Lisa having a brief moment to speak to her parents, proclaiming her innocence. The week between conviction and sentencing passed slowly. Lisa's parents visited daily, while Blake received one visit from a cousin. At sentencing, both received 15 years to life. Basil Smith promised to review the court records for a possible appeal. Within 3 days, they were transferred to state prison. Lisa's prison had a good reputation, but Blake's had a history of riots. With the trial over, media coverage ceased, and Lisa Evans and Blake Moore faded from public attention. A couple of months later, Basil Smith and Jeff Bagden met for a drink. Reflecting on the case, Smith expressed surprise at the convictions, believing the defendants' consistent stories suggested innocence. Bagden replied, "The jury didn't believe them. I try not to take these cases personally unless they involve particularly heinous crimes or children. This case wasn't the worst, but it didn't generate much sympathy for the defendants." A year later, a news item reported a major disturbance at Blake Moore's prison. Blake had been stabbed during the riot and transferred to the hospital with a collapsed lung. He was in serious condition but expected to survive. 18 months after Lisa Evans and Blake Moore were convicted of Mark Evans' homicide, Basil Smith rarely thought about the case. He had spent the first year reviewing transcripts, but found no legal grounds for appeal. One quiet Wednesday morning at the New York office of the Innocence Project, the receptionist received a FedEx package. Inside were a DVD, a sealed biohazard bag, and a multi-page letter. Intrigued, she called Tony Kelly, a young lawyer, to look at it. Tony, dressed casually, took the package to his office. He had been with the Innocence Project for a year, doing legal research. He enjoyed helping those wrongfully convicted. Sitting at his desk, he read the letter. The letter, addressed to the Innocence Project, began, "Regarding the convictions of Lisa Evans and Blake Moore, I don't know where to begin, so I'll start at the beginning. My name is not important, but the information I have could change the lives of the 2 convicted and 5 others, including me. About 15 months ago, a man responded to my ad for a computer-literate person. He knew as much, if not more, about business networks than I did. I hired him immediately. This man, whom I'll call Mark, was quiet but exceptionally skilled. Within 2 months, my business grew by 50% due to his efforts and long hours. When Mark started working for me, he had just arrived in town and hadn't rented a place yet. My business was new, so I rented him our basement room for extra income. I wanted to reinvest profits into the business to support me and my young son. Though a risk, something about Mark convinced me he was no threat. We quickly settled into a routine. For the first 3 months, he lived in the basement but ate with us and commuted together. He often worked extra hours without pay, preferring productivity over TV or sleep. Over time, our relationship evolved from employer-employee to friends and eventually into a loving family. My son now calls him Dad. From the start, I sensed something deeply troubled Mark. One quiet afternoon, I locked the office door and called him in. determined to find out what was bothering him. He eventually confessed he was running from a failed marriage. His wife had betrayed him with a good friend, and he nearly committed homicide self-destruction because of it. Our conversation helped him overcome his past. We started dating on weekends, maintaining separate roles during the week. After a month, he moved from the basement into my bedroom, and we became a family. Despite this, I felt he was still hiding something. Our relationship grew stronger, and Mark became a father figure to my son, who needs a loving dad. 4 days ago, Mark collapsed at work and was diagnosed with a heart condition requiring surgery. Once stabilized, he was moved to a private room where he shared his story, afraid it would die with him if he didn't survive the surgery. He told me this over the course of a day. Once I agreed to share his story with you, he seemed relieved. Now, as he sleeps, I'm typing this letter with our son asleep beside him. I need to finish this tonight, create a DVD, and send everything to you by noon tomorrow, ensuring it can't be traced back to us. Mark's story began almost 2 years ago. He was happily married to Lisa for nearly 6 years when he noticed a small bruise on her right bosom. Initially thinking it was from bumping into furniture, he realized it looked more like a love bite. Knowing it wasn't from him, he spent the night troubled by various scenarios of how the bruise got there. These thoughts stayed with him the next day at work. By the time he got to his office, he felt foolish for his suspicions. He had no evidence of wrongdoing and thought it was all circumstantial. Just before lunch, the parts delivery manager brought him a tracking device to evaluate for improving the delivery service. Mark quickly decided how to test it. 3 days after installing the device in his wife's car, he checked the monitor while at work. She had said she was going shopping, but the tracker showed she went to Blake Moore's house. An hour later, her car was still there. Suspicious, he called her. When she said she was shopping, he knew something was wrong. That evening, he listened to her false story about shopping, feeling sick, but deciding not to jump to conclusions. He observed her for another week while on a business trip, tracking her car through 3 states to Blake's house from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. She lied about being home the entire night. The confirmation of her infidelity devastated him. When he returned, he considered destruction. He knew Blake was a ladies' man, but never thought he'd pursue Lisa. Her betrayal broke his heart. That night, he visited the elderly widow next door under the pretense of borrowing a wrench. He retrieved a hidden revolver from her late husband's toolbox. Mark intended to use it to eliminate Blake and Lisa, then himself. He decided to wait until he caught them together. He ordered his own tracking device to return the one he was evaluating. Luckily, Lisa and Blake didn't meet for another week, giving Mark time to rethink. In those days, he devised a better plan: to frame them for homicide. He spent a week planning and gathering supplies. When ready, he claimed a weekend business trip, knowing they'd meet while he was away. When his wife went to Blake's, he set his plan in motion, creating a paper trail suggesting he was divorcing her. He almost forgot to send a crucial email to his lawyer that would implicate Lisa and Blake. Before leaving, he fired a bullet into his car's passenger seat and another into a wooden block, muffling the shots with a blanket in the garage. This step felt like a relief, marking the start of his revenge. You should look for archived newspaper articles online. Mark followed the trial daily and said most of the story was documented by court reporters. He thinks a complete review of the court transcript will clarify everything. First, he drove his car to a park near Blake's house and found a secluded spot. He had a large gym bag with all the materials for his plan. He spread everything out on a picnic table, covering it with an old blanket. He unloaded firewood, plastic sheeting, and a spare tire, creating a drag trail to the paved road, then returned the tire to the trunk and spread the firewood around. Using a small flashlight, he did all this and then sat quietly to see if anyone noticed. Mark drew blood from his hand using a needle, collecting nearly 2 pints, which he diluted with distilled water. He sprayed this blood in patterns to mimic an arterial jet and smeared it on the car seat and ground to suggest a significant blood loss. He filled bullet holes in the firewood and car upholstery with more blood. After finishing, he packed everything in his gym bag and left the park, reaching an old car he had bought for the purpose. Dizzy from blood loss, he rested until nearly 6 a.m., then drove to Blake's house to finish his plan. Lisa's car was still at Blake's house and unlocked, so he put a couple of drops of blood on the gas pedal. He also smeared blood on Blake's car but got scared when he saw a light on in Blake's bedroom. He quickly left, went to a payphone, and used a voice changer to report his car in the park, pretending to be a woman. He then disposed of 2 shovels and the revolver in the river. Exhausted, he stayed in a motel for 2 days, taking supplements and eating energy bars. He made another call with the voice changer, this time as an old man, which helped the police find the revolver. Mark told me this whole story because he wants to leave his past as Mark Evans behind. He now uses a different identity, which my son and I know him by, and wants to keep it. He asked me to send this information to help overturn the convictions of Lisa Evans and Blake Moore. Tomorrow I'll pick up a copy of the New York Times and an inkwell. We'll use part of the front page to put all of Mark's fingerprints in a bloodstain, which will match the DNA from the park, proving he's alive. This should be enough to free them from jail. At the end of the letter, there was a handwritten note. Mark came out of surgery in good condition. He wants me to fly to Seattle tomorrow to send this package. I hate to leave him, but it will ease his mind. We're expecting twins in about 3 months. Tony Kelly turned the last page to check for any additional notes, but it was blank. He put his feet down from the desk and examined the other items in the package. The DVD was labeled Photos Taken in George Washington Park, and the black plastic envelope was marked Fingerprints and DNA. He reviewed the printed pages again for any extra notes and then called a senior attorney. This was beyond his ability to handle alone. It didn't take long to confirm that the DNA belonged to Mark Evans, and the fingerprints matched those from his car found in the park, proving he was still alive. With undeniable evidence that 2 people were convicted of a homicide that never happened, the state attorney general and governor expedited their release. A week later, they returned to the courtroom with Basil Smith, Lisa's parents, and even District Attorney Jeff Bagden. With some state representatives present, the state attorney general apologized for the wrongful conviction. He blamed Mark Evans for misleading the justice system and announced efforts to find him and hold him accountable for the financial costs incurred. When asked where they would start looking for Mark, he could only shake his head. Blake Moore seemed changed, no longer arrogant but more inclined to compromise. He apologized to Lisa for the events leading to their imprisonment. Lisa appeared indifferent, longing only to leave with her parents. Both Basil Smith and the district attorney apologized, acknowledging they had been misled by Mark Evans. They vowed to be more diligent in future cases. Although the state found no liability, Lisa and Blake received $50,000 each in compensation. Blake, whose business went bankrupt and house was sold for legal fees, left town. He commented to Lisa that Mark had severely wronged them and the check was a mere fraction of what he lost. Lisa, visibly worn from her ordeal, simply said they deserved it and left without saying goodbye. 2 weeks after cable news reported their release, a large envelope arrived at Basil Smith's office. Inside was a note for the attorney and a sealed envelope for Lisa. Basil delivered the letter to Lisa at her apartment. After a brief conversation, he left her with the envelope, which she opened with apprehension. Recognizing Mark's handwriting, she read the letter. Lisa, I apologize for the time you spent in jail. Your betrayal with Blake drove me nearly insane. My new life and happiness have shown me that freeing you both was necessary for my own freedom. I know authorities will search for me, but I am confident in my new life with my new family. Good luck and goodbye. M. The letter slipped from her hand, shattering any remaining hope of reconciliation with Mark.